Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
It will surprise people who are listening to know that I actually have a day job. This is something I don't do permanently and get paid for. That day job at the moment has me working with an incredibly inspirational group of people who are an organisation called Beyond Blue. We see references to Beyond Blue regularly on the TV and on the radio, often at the end of a news story where there's some disturbing information. And it's with a great deal of excitement and just a slight bit of trepidation since she's the boss that I introduce the CEO of Beyond Blue. Good morning, Georgie Harman.
G'day, Neil. How are you? How weird is this?
More weird than something that's really weird. And not to be able to see you on a Zoom call. The funny thing is we've been working together for 3 or 4 months. Never met Georgie yet, but I've seen her a million times on screen. We have a great chat every Monday morning, don't we?
It's a funny that doing this radio interview thing that I do here and on Thursday mornings, you develop these wonderful friendships with people you'd never seen. At least you've had a Zoom chance to have a chat. But I guess in this world we're living in at the moment, George, you think we're coming out the other end, but a lot of these conversations you are having with important people in your world that you don't actually meet, you don't have that face-to-face contact which improves relationships. But I suppose because of that, your workload has increased because a lot of people find themselves in that environment and becomes a very uncomfortable environment.
Oh, look, Rob, I think that's absolutely right. It's been an extraordinarily busy time for us, but that's what we're here for. You know, that's what we get funded to do, and that's what the community supports us to do. And it's just been it's been pretty stressful, but it's been such an honour to work in a role like mine and to work with the incredible people that are at Beyond Blue and that, you know, are so passionate about supporting the community. And it's just an absolute, my job is an absolute joy, actually. I'm surrounded by incredible people who really care about others. I'm surrounded by really smart people, and I get to connect with people often in really hard times, you know, they're in their darkest moments, but I also get to see them improve and realise that, you know, things like depression, anxiety are really common, and if anything, the last couple of years has shown us is that people are more prepared to talk about this. We're having a much more open conversation about mental health, and I think that's a really good thing. So, you know, I love my job.
Because I think one of the things, Georgie, that we go back. Let's go back 30 years. I know that it's getting you probably in your childhood at that stage. He said,
come on, Neil.
Just to keep you on the good side. But you go back 30 years, there was no Beyond Blue. People would talk behind their hand about the fact that someone's not doing too well. That has been obviously a massive change in society and clearly one for the better.
Oh, absolutely. You know, as you said, you know, Beyond Blue's been around for 21 years now, and back in the day, you know, we didn't talk about this stuff. And if we did, it was, as you said, behind closed curtains or behind the back of our hand, or someone had gone away for a while, or, you know, we didn't, you know, when someone died by suicide, we didn't talk about that. We said they died suddenly or you know, they died of another illness. And now we are having really open conversations because, again, the last couple of years in particular have shown, I think, everybody in Australia that in the right circumstances and with the right combination of circumstances, no one is immune, right? We've all struggled. Our mental health and well-being has absolutely been affected by the last couple of years. I don't know anyone that COVID hasn't affected. So this gives us a chance to open up our minds, open up our hearts, open up our mouths, open up our ears and listen to one another, and actually bring this thing even more out of the shadows. And we've got to keep talking about this stuff. We can't just go back to, you know, okay, everything's okay now, because we know that the mental health impacts of the pandemic are actually going to be really long. And people are going to take a while to kind of get back on track. And there's still a lot of uncertainty, and people are feeling very unsettled at the moment, even though, you know, restrictions have ended and we're all kind of getting back to something that looks a bit more normal. we know that people are still really struggling, and there's particular groups that are doing it tougher than others at the moment.
Georgie, I'm intrigued by people who have CEO titles about skill sets, how they're developed, and in the commercial world a skill set can be transferred to lots of different industries quite quickly. But tell us a little bit about your working life to get you into this position.
Oh, I'm a bit of a mixed bag. There's no real logic to my career. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I'm one of those people.
Yeah,
We should sit and talk about it because I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. And look, I studied a history of art at uni. I sort of went into the law for a while as a paralegal. And then I found myself volunteering in the HIV/AIDS sector, actually, in London, which is where I'm originally from. And from that, I kind of went into fundraising and then marketing and sales. And then I ended up coming to Australia and running an HIV charity in Sydney. So I kind of just fell into, I've been presented with opportunities, and I've often had people push me into them. And then I found myself in these jobs and gone, oh, okay, surround myself with people smarter than me. But I'm a generalist. I believe passionately in social justice. I have to do work that gets me out of bed in the morning, that gives me a sense of purpose. But I've got a degree in the arts, and I've just kind of picked up skills along the way. I love people. I love kind of being in a role where I can actually motivate and hopefully inspire people every now and then. And I think I've got a pretty good sort of gut sense about what's right and wrong. But yeah, I love my job, and I've picked up a few skills along the way. I also am a recovering public servant, actually. I worked in the Northern Territory for a while, and then in Canberra for about 7 years. So.
That's an interesting segue into the next question I was going to ask. Clearly, the two things that are very important that you would have had from early working days is compassion and empathy, which I couldn't imagine you could do this job without. But a term we've heard a lot lately is taking the medical advice. You've got gut feel, you've got common sense, you've got compassion and empathy, but how much do you rely on the medical advice to help you wind your way through your day?
Oh, look, I mean, so I've experienced depression before. This was probably about 6 years ago now, my first time in my life, and I was, really not good. And I think the things that, so the clinical system, the medical advice, absolutely important. But the things that actually made the biggest difference for me, and I think in my recovery, and it's something I hear and I talk about with many, many other people who've experienced depression or anxiety, is connection. Having really good mates, having people that love you and that you love, having something meaningful to do, a job with purpose, or a volunteer role, having a safe place to call home, where you can shut the door or open it up and welcome people in. It's a job, it's a safe home, and it's a date on a Saturday night. It's having something to do and having someone that loves you, and that you can love back. Those are the things that, as human beings, actually ground us, connect us, and make us feel, like we're making a contribution, and that we have a space in this crazy world that we live in.
Yeah.
Again, those things, those really basic human needs, have been the things that, at times over the last couple of years, have been really stripped away from us, and it's been really hard for many people. So those combinations of jobs, something meaningful to do, somewhere safe to live, someone who loves you, combined with the clinical system and the amazing clinicians that we have that support people every day, the powerful combination of those two things is the thing that I'm really interested in,
Yeah, because I think, and I should point out that whilst I'm doing some work at Beyond Blue, my work is much more in terms of the way the business operates, more so than the actual services provided. So I don't have any clinical or any medical knowledge at all. So what I'm saying is anecdotal from probably outside of the world of Beyond Blue and stuff that I saw before I started there. But there seemed to be, I would expect there was an increase in the service requirements of Beyond Blue and the demands on the services in the early stages, because that connectivity was being broken. I sense that might be changing a bit, and people's anxiety now is around reconnecting. Is that fair?
Yeah, look, that's absolutely right. We actually ran a survey of about 1,600 Aussies from around the country in the middle of October, 2 weeks in the middle of October, as restrictions were beginning to ease in New South Wales and ACT and Victoria. And that survey showed some really interesting stuff, but stuff that was being reflected in our services. So basically, as Australia opened up, people are still feeling really unsettled. This is another massive adjustment and change in our life after 2 years of constant change and having to adjust and all the stresses that we've been living and working through. So the survey showed that 1 in 4 of us feel really worried or restless. 1 in 5 were actually finding it really difficult to engage with others again, and a lot of people feeling real sort of social anxiety. And 1 in 3 felt that they just really couldn't be bothered. And we launched an initiative a couple of weeks ago now called Mixed Emotions, to actually say to people, look, if you're feeling this way, it's actually really common and actually really normal for the circumstances. And we're just reminding people that our coronavirus support service is there around the clock for exactly this kind of thing. We want to get ahead of this stuff. It's completely normal to be feeling mixed emotions or out of sorts right now. We want people to actually get ahead of that and take the steps to protect their mental health and well-being, stop those feelings deteriorating into something more serious. And we've come up with a series of new words, things like chill panic. So, inside or outside, everything's kind of looking pretty chilled, but inside you're churning, you're really stressed about things. Things like worry hope. We're actually really hopeful about the future and looking forward to it, but we're also really unsettled by it. We're worried about it because it's still so uncertain. There's a lot of COVID still out in the community. So again, this campaign is all about normalising those feelings and saying, hey, we're still here and you don't need to manage this discomfort alone. Pick up the phone, jump online. You don't need a diagnosis. You don't need a referral. It's completely free. It's completely confidential. And you don't even need to find the right words, Our counsellors, you don't have the script ready to go. Our counsellors will actually meet you where you are. And there's no shame in that. So we're seeing record demand for our services, and I don't want people to worry about that either. We're able to keep up with that demand. But, Neil, you said, maybe services are waning. Actually, that's not the case. We're still sitting at about 43% higher volume in the first 10 months of this year than we were in the same period in 2019, so pre-pandemic. So services are at record levels, and we expect that trend to actually continue.
Because in my head, Georgie, and this is just a parallel that's come to my mind while you're talking, that in some respects what we're going through now as a community is probably some of the things that a prisoner would feel, having been locked away for a couple of years in jail, coming out and reconnecting with the community, realising things are different on the other side. And often we see them going back in, don't we, because they just can't cope with that change.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's actually, there's a technical term for it. It's called Reentry Syndrome. And there's some great studies done with explorers who spend months or even years in Antarctica and really remote places and then come back into civilization, if you like, and which is really stimulating. Like, there's lots going on. It's noisy. It's busy. There's so much stimulation, and it can really, really affect people. And we're seeing a lot of that, maybe not to that extreme, but people really worried about getting back on public transport, people really worried about going back into their workplaces, people really worried about sending their kids back to school. These are really valid feelings, and again, that's why our support services are there. And our counsellors will actually just talk you through what's going on in your life and how you're feeling about it, give you some really simple strategies right there and then, and then refer you on to either resources or there's some really great sort of self-management tools, or even, to refer you on to a longer-term service if that's what, they think you need. But the most important thing is that people don't ignore these feelings, and if it starts getting in the way of, you feeling good about yourself and good about your life and stops you sleeping and maybe you might be turning to the grog a bit too much, that's the time to pick up the phone or jump online and have a chat with Beyond Blue.
Georgie, organisations like yours, and I've had the privilege of speaking to others that manage them, dealing with what seems from the outside a pretty sad environment. So the need to be looking after oneself is very important. Is it easy for you still to get up in the morning, polish up, go off to a job that we would think was a pretty sad sort of environment?
Yeah, look, it's a question I often get asked. You know, people say, "God, your job must be so depressing." And I say, actually, it's not. It's a job that is really hard sometimes. And I see and spend time and listen and sit alongside people who, are going through extraordinary trauma and difficulty. But again, I see real strength in them, and I see how organisations like Beyond Blue can make a difference to their lives, and that is an incredibly, as I said, humbling and joyful experience often. So look, I love my job, I really do, and I get a lot of happiness and joy out of it, which some people find surprising. But back to your question, self-care, right? Self-care is so important. And look, to be frank, I'm not very good at it sometimes. I'm just, I'm a flawed human being like everybody. I know what I need to do, but sometimes, life and work and everything else gets on top of you. The things that I really need to keep an eye on are getting enough sleep. Sleep is really good for our mental health. If we get a good night's sleep, everything feels a little bit better in the morning, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. But also, exercise, moving your body, even if it's just a stroll around the block every day. Exercise, getting our body moving actually really helps our mind as well. And also, I've got to really keep an eye on how much alcohol I drink. So those three things for me are the things that I have to really prioritise in terms of my self-care. But the bottom line, the ingredients for good mental health, regardless of whether or not you live with a mental health condition, are exercise, diet, sleep, and human contact. If we can get those things right, we all do better.
And I think the work environment, and this is not because, there's probably going to be people at Beyond Blue listening to this on Monday if they aren't already listening at the moment, but it's a culture like no other that I've ever worked in, where there is genuine care for each other and genuine support for each other, and you and your leadership team are to be congratulated for that, because in an environment where life could be pretty tough and you don't get a lot of clients, I suspect, ringing the service from the community that we support saying, I'm ringing up to let you know I'm in really good shape. It's generally going to be people in a dark place or in a place where it could be getting dark. I think the criticality of having a culture in your workplace that enables support and genuine care for each other, I'm regularly, that's the thing that I keep going away at the end of the day and going, that's really quite unique.
Oh, look, that's lovely to hear, Neil, and I think it is a pretty special place, and it's only a special place because of the incredible people that we have as part of the team, and I agree with you. I think the level of care and empathy and compassion for colleagues is quite incredible, and it's really come out in the last 18 months, 2 years in particular. It's always been there, but it's really been heightened, I think. And one of the really interesting things is we're growing as an organisation. We've got a massive influx of new people to the team, and often they've never met their colleagues. They've only ever seen them on a small box, on a screen. And the joy of actually opening up our office again recently and seeing people for the first time, meeting people for the first time, and seeing these, two people who've been working together for the last year and have never met actually connect for the first time. It's really beautiful to watch, actually.
If I had $10 for everyone who said to me the other day when I visited the office, gee, you're tall, when I'm not, I'm only 6'3", we wouldn't ever have to go to the government again. We could just run it off the $10 donations, I reckon, just based on that.
Maybe we should start that, Neil.
We'll try that. What do you think?
George, just a quick question to finish. I've been intrigued by the recognition that Beyond Blue has got, and the original founder, Jeff Kennett, was clearly a name, particularly in Victoria, that everyone knew well, and then continuation of having Julia Gillard at the top of the pile. Do you think high-profile people who are clearly in behind it helps others to make that connection, make that decision to connect because your organisation is reputable because of those who represent it?
Oh, I think absolutely, and I think what the privilege of working with two people who are very different, like Jeff and Julia, is just quite incredible. We're very lucky to have both of them. Obviously as a major part of our organisation. And what I think that says to people is we've got two former politicians from opposite ends of the spectrum. Beyond Blue's fiercely bipartisan. We play the issue, not the politics, and that I think has been a really big part of our of our success and our recognition over the years. But I also think having people with profile as part of your governance group, as part of the board that steers me, keeps me honest, and sets our directions is. We need people who are lightning rods. We need people who others can see, who've got a platform, who can use their networks, who can, grab media attention and speak and communicate really clearly about the issues, and who can actually make people sit up and say, okay, well, maybe we need to pay attention to this issue. So I think there's a whole range of benefits that come with having people like Jeff and Julia.
Certainly the private and public life of Julia Gillard, I reckon would make it a lot easier for women in that gender inequality space to pick up the phone, because it really gives your organisation credibility with her representing it. That's my view anyway.
Yeah, that's right. And we've got an incredible group of people on our board, ranging from Aboriginal psychiatrists to, Joanna Griggs, Better Homes and Gardens, to a young doctor, just an incredible group of people, really diverse group of people from right around Australia who add a whole range of different perspectives, and, including from big business too. So it's a great group of people.
Well, Georgie, I know that you do a lot of work during the week, and to have to pick up the phone and talk to us for 20 minutes on a Saturday morning is probably not the thing that you look forward to most. Go and buy yourself a cup of coffee. In fact, I'll buy you a cup of coffee next time when we finally get to meet face to face. But we will have had some people who would have listened in today when they saw that Beyond Blue was going to be mentioned, who may in fact be having some issues, some wanting to talk to someone about their own mental well-being. The telephone number 1300 22 4636. That's 1300 22 4636, or of course beyondblue.org.au. You want to see your people busy, I guess, and if anyone out there with even a slight inkling that they might want to talk to someone, jump on the phone or visit the website.
Absolutely. That's what we are there for. There is no issue that is too big or too small. You do not have to struggle alone. And again, I want people to know that if I can experience depression, anyone can, right? And there's nothing to be ashamed of. The earlier we jump on these feelings and the earlier we start to open up and talk to people, even if it is a stranger on the end of the phone or at Beyond Blue's line, the sooner we get back to being ourselves. So, please pick up the phone. Don't suffer in silence. And this is really common. And, I hope everyone is doing okay.
And just as an adjunct to that, I actually used the services of Beyond Blue probably 15 years ago, and not because it was me having an issue with my mental health, but a member of my family was. So it's not just the people who are actually in that situation, but those around them that are working to support and be there and do all the things you mentioned earlier, obviously are welcome to call as well.
Absolutely, yeah. You can call on behalf of yourself, or you call for yourself, or you can call on behalf of someone else. One of the things I often say to people is, if you're sitting with a mate or a work colleague and you're starting to, they've shared something with you that they're not doing well, one of the strategies that works really well is to say, hey, should we pick up the phone and call Beyond Blue together? And something about that, something that the safety of someone having your back and actually that helping you take that first step, which can be really overwhelming and scary for some people, is a really, really, helpful thing to do. But yeah, call for yourself, call for someone else, anything. Just pick up the phone. We don't want people to wait too long, and the earlier we do that, the better it is for everyone.
1300 22 46 36. Georgie Harman, CEO of Beyond Blue, and a mate of mine, I'd like to say. Thanks for taking some time out of your Saturday morning. Go and get that coffee, and we'll talk soon.
Pleasure. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Georgie. All the best.